Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ongoing Mastery, Presenting and Speaking, the podcast. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hey, Kirsten, I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Hey, so let's talk about humor today.
Yes,
What you have thoughts about humor? What are some of your thoughts about humor and public speaking?
I do have thoughts about humor and public speaking. It's a great way to bond with your audience, to get your audience a little bit loose, especially if your topic is mandatory in some way or maybe traditionally dull, but that humor can be tricky. It can be really
Hmm.
hard to pull off. So it's a double edged sword, shall we say.
Yeah, and self-deprecating humor, while is often good in in-person settings, if you're somebody who is trying to establish your authority,
Mm.
um if you already have authority, self-deprecating humor is fine. But if you're somebody trying to establish your authority, depends. You got to know your audience. And yeah, there's it's amazing. Even really experienced speakers, at I think it was last year's NSA conference Influence, there was a very established author and speaker who made a joke that landed so wrong with me and a bunch of other people that
Oh,
one of the people I knew walked out. Like, I was
wow.
sitting there going, okay, because it was a joke that probably landed differently 15, 20, 30 years ago, but he made a
Yeah.
joke about retardation.
Oh,
Oh
oh
yeah.
no.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, I grew up with a mom who's a clinical psychologist who worked with retarded clients, and I spent a lot of time with in that environment. And in fact, one of my friends when I was a kid was somebody whose body was much, much older, but had the same age as me, and we had the same sense of humor.
Yeah.
So I got no sense of humor about that at all.
No.
And it was interesting because we were all very disappointed that this really
Yes.
brilliant man made this, offhand retard joke. And it was like, ooh. And I get that humor is shifted and some things are, some people find it a lot harder to do humor now, but
Yeah.
there's still ways to do humor. What are some of
Absolutely.
your go-tos for being able to include humor?
Well, as you know, I teach college writing and often first year college writing, first semester, first class, 8 a.m. Monday, first day of the semester, brand new college students. And many of them have been taught in their high schools to address their faculty by Mr. or Mrs. And so I get a lot of Mrs. Donovan. And I'm not Mrs. Donovan. It's not my legal name. It's not how I'm known in the world at all. And so I make a joke about it because I want them to laugh a little bit and I want it to stick in
Mm.
all of the first day stuff. And so I make a point of saying, you can call me Professor Donovan, Prof D. You can call me Wisest Moon Goddess if you need to, but don't call me Mrs. Donovan. That's my mother. None of us want her teaching this class. And then I move on, right? Because for most 18-year-olds, the thought of their parent teaching the class is funny. Doesn't matter who their
Yes.
parents are, even if their parents are teachers, right? And so it's a safe joke that points to something that's important to me.
Yeah.
And it's not critical to the course. It often takes some students multiple tries to get the professor part right. But at least I've made the joke up front and it gives me a way to refer back to it that's not finger wagging at them.
Yeah. And I noticed that my use of humor has shifted over the years because when I first moved up to Massachusetts in 2000 and was doing the technical training public speaking thing, I was all over Boston, then all over North America, and then a bunch of gigs overseas. And so when I
Mm,
was local, there's a lot of local humor that works. There's a lot of local humor
Yeah.
you need to be careful of, but there's a lot of local humor that works. And I'd gotten in the habit of using, like, you know, Massachusetts, oh, I parked my car kind of humor
Yeah.
that does not land outside of
Ooh.
regions that understand it. And I also used cultural humor and jokes and geekiness, which is my normal thing. And then I went overseas, and none of my
Mm-hmm.
jokes made any sense to anybody that I was working with.
No.
And so I had to completely stop. And I hadn't built in a backup.
Yeah.
So one of the things to be aware of is, like, as Kelly and I and you know work with clients on gestures, and that gestures have a lot of meanings, and there's a lot of stuff that you do that if you're dealing with an international audience, you need to be aware of what gestures mean in other cultures. Same thing with
Yes.
humor.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of words that my friends in the UK happily use that they cannot use in the United States because
I
people are
know some
like,
of those.
yes, one
Yes.
of them starts with a C, and it is a perfectly, hey, buddy word. Not here, it's not. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful. Um,
One of them starts with an F and is another word for cigarette.
yes,
And
yes,
yes.
yes, exactly. And it's like, yeah, we're not going there, exactly. So
Right.
you have to be careful. I've defaulted to dad jokes. Like, that's become my go to now. So I now look for really, really bad, like, hey, Kelly, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting sloth. And, okay. See, Kelly didn't say interrupting sloth who. And then the response is, which does not read on radio, but only reads on video. But she laughed because she knows the joke. So there's also knock, knock, who's there? Interrupting cow, interrupting moo,
Yes.
that kind of thing. Like, really dumb. Do you have a go to dumb joke or no?
Um, I don't know that I have a go-to, but in the strain of absurdist humor that apparently all toddlers and 4 or 5 or so year old kids go through. It's just a phase of their understanding of how language works and how to get a reaction from people. Absurdist humor. So, knock knock,
Who's there?
potato, and then
Potato.
fall over laughing. Right. That's
Okay.
exactly
Okay.
that expression that you just made
Yes.
is the joke. Right.
Okay.
Completely non sequitur
Yep.
potato.
It's a
Right. And that sort of,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
this is one of those where you're going to want to go to YouTube and watch the video of this if you're listening on the streams, on Apple or anything else, because yeah, facial expressions are all. And then you can get away with voices in some cases. Like, I really love a cheesy pirate joke. So I will always
yes.
do, what is the favorite letter of the alphabet for a pirate? And most people will, call out, you know,
R.
R. And then you wait, and somebody will get the one you mean, but it's okay because most people say R. Then you go, oh, you'd think it'd be R, but it's the C. And you got to lean into the sound effect of the voice in order for that joke to work. But if you have a lack of dignity like I do, then, rock on. It works. Um, I find, like, one of the other ways of using humor that I used recently is I, because I've been doing this a really long time, like you have, I don't really worry about people thinking I'm being silly because I've
Mm,
always been silly as a way of making especially nervous folks relax because technical training,
yeah.
you know. So I now, in the last conference, I always put on music when I start. And the last conference,
Yep.
my session was 8:30 in the morning on the last day of the conference.
Oi.
Welcome to hell. Like,
Yeah.
it's the worst spot, but it's okay because at 8:05, like I waited until the 8 o'clock, the sessions were closed. 8:05, my pentatonics went on, it cranked up, and I'm out there doing my thing and dancing. And people are walking by, and I'm in the hallway going, "Come on in. You really want to be in this session. This is the session you don't need coffee for." And making an utter chump of myself. But I don't mind, I don't care. And also it really gave people a huh, like this is what you're going to be getting with me. This is
Yeah,
an energy thing. It allowed people to lighten up because learning and development conferences, that's a lot of all conferences. It's a lot of material. You're
yeah,
drinking from a fire hose. So you want to have some fun with it. And
yeah.
I personally love, putting on, music in the morning. So,
One thing that President Biden did recently in the White House
mhm.
Correspondents' Dinner was perfect. I mean, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is already a roast. It's supposed to, as they say, punch up at the people in power and skewer, satirize. And of course, when Biden announced that he was running again, his age is a problem, even among those who might support him. And among other jokes, Biden made a perfect joke and just sort of tossed aside that he was personal friends with President James Madison, one of the founding fathers, right? And the joke slays because, of course, he's making fun of his age. That issue is not going to go away on the campaign trail,
Nope.
and he's got to be able to deal with it in some way. And so by making a joke that's funny and a joke that exaggerates the problem that those with concerns are focused on,
Yeah.
he's diffusing the issue.
Yes.
And also, crack timing as part of the concern about age is a proxy for his intellectual capacity. Is it diminishing as it can with age? And if you can deliver well crafted material with good timing, it is a sign that you're fine.
Yeah. It's hard to deliver. You definitely want to practice. How do you feel,
Yeah.
Kelly, about people workshopping their humor at big like speeches? How do you feel about that?
No. I feel like no. So, my big takeaway tip for today is to stay in your lane, which what I mean by that is know what kind of humor sits well with you, know your audience to know what kind of humor is or isn't appropriate there. And then, if you are not someone who is routinely making the kinds of observations that make other people laugh, if that's not generally your personality, a big speech is not the time to debut your stand up routine, right?
Yeah.
That's something you need to work into either practice speeches for the big one or lower stakes speaking opportunities just to get a sense for how well it plays in the room. But you've got to be aware of your audience and all of that. I, for example, would never really launch into, say, fairly raunchy humor.
Mm.
I find it funny, but I don't think I can deliver it in a way that makes it funny. And so that's not something I'm ever going to do in a public speaking situation, even if it's appropriate to the moment, right? It's not humor I can pull off.
Yeah, and it's really important that you know your audience, and you don't always get to know your audience. So
Yeah.
I you got to be careful. Like, I'm of an age where a lot of my cultural references are of a point where people in my audience that are, half my age
Hmm.
don't, a lot of them have no idea what the heck I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that you need to do as part of ongoing mastery is if you're going to be working humor, that is one of the reasons why you need to stay culturally relevant and
Yes.
you need to be aware. Like it, and please understand, I am not asking you to do the thing that NPR does, and I love them to death. But every once in a while, folks on the local NPR station will try to speak in modern, um, edgy patois or whatever the cool kids say, and they will try to do a joke in whatever the slang is of the 20s or the teens, and it hurts my soul because
Yeah.
it doesn't land, and it's also not delivered as like with the professional. It's clearly somebody who really wants to. Please don't. Just don't. Like, be aware of the things, but figure out what your audiences are and shape your humor accordingly to things that are kind of absurdities of life, or
Yeah.
things that, you're going to have the one person out of 99 who is going to get bent, and that person is going to get bent. I teach in my intensive software training classes. When I notice that people are getting a little crispy, and I'm doing this online, so it's people get crispy fast. I will teach
Yeah.
people how to curse in Norse, but I teach them how to curse in Norse, something that clearly, and I'm upfront about it, means your mother wears Roman soldier shoes. Your mother wears army boots. It's not an actual FU kind of curse. And I had someone chew out my contact person for 2 solid hours about how
Wow.
angry she was and how disrespectful and how unprofessional. And and I'm like, well, I'm definitely not the kind of person you want to watch stuff with, because I use jokes, and
Yeah.
I use jokes professionally, and I will do humor professionally as part of my work. And if that doesn't work for you, that's fine. There are other sessions.
Yeah.
But, in person, what I used to do is you have a room full of people, right? And
Hmm.
eventually you get this look, which only works on camera. So just bear with me, which
Yeah.
is the staring into space 10,000 yard. And I would notice occasionally, and I would do the, okay, I have a Bambi standard. This is how I determine breaks. I need to see what the Bambi score is. Let me see how many people are deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a Bambi score of 4. Break time. Everybody get up. And it worked really well in person. I can't do
Right.
that online.
But you
It
need to do
doesn't work
something in
online,
that moment.
but I need to do something. So
Yeah.
I will do other things, because you have to be able to disconnect people from the spiral they're in, especially when they're
Yeah.
stressing about, I have to know this material, or I don't feel I understand, or they're spinning. You have to be able to disconnect that for folks. And
Yeah.
that's part of being an educator. Experienced educators like, Kellie and I, we got this in the bag. If you're new to the work, you got to figure out techniques.
Yeah.
So, humor.
But
So that's where we are today.
and sometimes though, even experienced educators miss. I believe you have a friend, Jay, whose book cover was a joke, and too many people didn't get it.
Yeah. So Jay Schuh is brilliant. He is funny. He's charismatic. He is all the things. And he's very creative. He's an excellent educator. And what's lovely about him is, not only is he a good speaker and he's a good animator and all the things, but he has a really good sense of humor about himself. So he had
Mm,
done a book on creativity, and we interviewed him for the podcast. And one of the things is that his book has Comic Sans as the font on the cover of the book for a reason, because the
right.
core message of the book is, don't assume, don't assume by what you see. But so many people instantly looked at it and did exactly what the message of the book was, which was don't assume. And they went, oh my God, he used Comic Sans on his book. He obviously doesn't know what creativity is. He's obviously just a moron. And so the message didn't land. And I'm like, you need to tell people that the joke is there in this one. That was a little obscure. But he
Yeah.
had a good sense of humor about it, because he understood. He's like, he knew the joke, but the joke, there was a level at which that people missed it. And so now, you know, lesson learned. Um, but it happens. It
It
happens. You
does.
you know, not everything's going to land. So your takeaway was, know your lane.
Yep.
My takeaway is lean into the power of the dad joke. If you don't have anything else, dad jokes are good. They're nice and safe. Um, just be aware, you know, humor's tough. Humor's really, really hard. Drama's hard. Humor, comedy's harder. So
Yes.
plan accordingly.
Can I share with you something that our teenager said the other day that just dropped me in my tracks?
Yes.
So, for the audience, 16-year-old teenager, very dry sense of humor, excellent comic timing. She and I are in the kitchen. I'm loading the dishwasher. More dirty dishes than space in the dishwasher. And I'm trying to jiggle this and juggle that and move a mug handle fractionally to the side just to fit something else in beside it. And at one point she goes, Mom, you're going to have to accept that this is not a dishwasher of holding. And I fell over.
All right. And for the non geeks in the audience, um, just Google bag of holding. You'll
We'll
just
put it in the show
we'll
notes.
put it in the show notes. That's really good. Yeah, Maeve is
Yeah.
good. Brendan has excellent comedic timing. He's very, very good. But what I like is that he'll do a lot of the deadpan, really. And it's like just nails you, where he just is like, no, you're not going to get me. And it's like,
Yeah.
well done, sir. Well played. All right. So,
All right.
what we would like everybody to do is to please, in whatever medium you are absorbing this, whether it's the audio, whether it's YouTube, whether whatever, make a comment. Give us your thoughts. What is your best go to joke? Share it with other people. I'd like to
Yeah.
see a whole bunch of jokes and be able to gather some new material for all of us. So, you know, kick in, have some stuff in there, and we will see you all next time. Thanks for coming.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.